One of the flagship products for this year of Commander was Commander Collection Green, a series of green EDH staples with new art and flavour. Whilst the reactions to the product have been mixed, the new flavour and lore for the cards was indeed welcome, and with the inevitable release of the collections in the other four colours, we thought we would take a breather from the constant preview hype and throw our suggestions into the ring. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And we are going to be talking today about the Commander Collection series, although it's not really a series right now. It's just only had one input, which is Commander Collection Green. But today we're going to be talking about what we would want to see in future Commander Collections. And I think we kind of had this conversation slightly when we got the spoilers for Commander Collection a few months ago. But now that it's actually been released, I think it's kind of worth talking in depth about actually which individual cards we would want to see in these Commander Collections and kind of what lore we would want to see on them, because they seem to be, like, they're in the same realm as the sort of like Chandra and Gideon spellbooks, right? And the Jace spellbook. They kind of fill that slot a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they kind of have thematic to them.
Yeah, exactly, where they kind of give reprints but then put a different skin on them. A lot of people have been upset with this product because of the price of it, is one of the factors, where people have thought that it's just way too expensive for what it is. I noticed it prices weirdly. This seems to be an issue where the prices in the US seem to be a lot higher than the prices that we've been getting in the UK. I mean, we picked our... because you got one and I got one of the non-foil version, and I think it was 50 quid from our LGS, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then obviously the premium one, which is a complete disgrace, is way more expensive. But I think in the US it was like $70 or something outrageous for the non-foil one.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Prices over in Europe tend to be a little less anyway, but I don't know, the market's quite different. But yeah, we managed to scoot them up for it. I guess it makes it feel less bad when you cut £20 off it, like 20% or whatever. So I guess
yeah, and I think there definitely was a lot of prominent content creators that seem to have directed issue at it. I know Tolarian Community College, for example, on their Is It Worth It video, basically said no, and that if you were to compare them to the Planeswalker collection things, the spellbooks, sorry, I keep forgetting that term, that they're not worth it monetarily. But that's not really what we concern ourselves with on this podcast. Like, things will be priced however they're priced, especially when there's no MSRP. And the monetary value of things isn't always the same and shouldn't be considered the same as the enjoyment value or the artistic value, shall we say, of these products. And I've got to say, I actually, from a flavour-wise and like an artistic level, really like Commander Collection Green. I mean, that's why I picked one up. Or rather, my wife has bought me one for Christmas as a Christmas present. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, what did you think now that you've had time to digest it? Because you've got the cards as well.
I do, yeah. I really like it as an idea. I think it's a good way to get cards that are necessary to the format back in circulation. Say, because the little things like, say, Seaborn use a bit of a better representation instead of just being some random lady. How exactly is she a spirit? Instead, presenting it in a new way and giving also planes like, say, Kamigawa's is the biggest thing I think I liked about this, was that they were able to give some throwback flavour to a block that we're probably not going to see. If we do, it'll be a fair few years down the line, probably in some offshoot ancillary product rather than actual full set. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to get cards back in circulation and get story aspects back in circulation and keep them in the new players and the current players like mindset and availability.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of space nowadays in products to do this, like elsewhere. Like Commander Legends, for example, is a really good place to reprint a bunch of stuff. Any of those kind of special products like Battle Bond or whatever, where it was a really good place to reprint a lot of this stuff. But I kind of feel like with the Commander Collection idea, it's like they're able to even push it even further. Like the actual card value in this Collection Green was pretty good. You had like Worldly Tutor and Sylvan Library, they were quite expensive cards. Like even Omnath, the original Omnath that was printed in there, that was getting up there in price as well. So I think it was kind of a nice place to put them. And just there are format staples, which I think if you're a really invested Commander player and you enjoy sort of molding your deck to your own sort of visual aesthetics, or you want to put everything in a theme, having only one artwork for a card like Bane of Progress just isn't always the best. Or, one artwork for a Command Tower, or there's two now, So I think these Commander collections do fill a good space for that, where they are essentially just a Commander Masters, but just kind of shrunk down. I'm going to have a hot take here. I really like that they put Command Tower and Sol Ring in Commander Collection Green. There is so much hate for it. People really hate the fact that they've put these two like widely available Commander staples in this collection just with new art. I kind of feel like this is exactly where they need to put it, though, right?
I mean, they are base level staples. You could criticize that maybe Command Tower should have been one of the other commander like lands, like say something like Command Beacon, or something like that, because it was just reprinted in Legends and it is now like exceptionally available. But on the other hand, there is also the argument that you can then add, a little bit of extra flavor on your command tower and have a Garrick-inspired command tower, which feels more appropriate in a green-based deck. That's maybe the only fault. I think Sol Ring, you can't argue with not being any product that says commander on it, because I mean it's one of the few places you can play it, and every deck kind of has one in there. So yeah, I don't read it that poorly. That the fact that they did this and rounded it out. If you look at the rest of the cards, it's a fair amount of value. I don't think it's like slots missing. It's like might as well chuck that in as well, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. The Command Tower in the Commander Collection Green was the only one that flavorfully I kind of thought was a bit of a dud. Like, I loved the Sol Ring, because the Sol Ring has its own flavor, like the original sort of Sol Ring, and then the more commonly printed one that's been printed, like in most Commander sets, for example. That has a flavor text and flavor all of its own, but again, it doesn't really fit with every deck that it's going to be put in. So to give a Sol Ring a color identity almost is a pretty cool idea. The Command Tower, yeah, didn't really hit for me. Like, I didn't, the artwork and the flavor text reference Garrick, but did the artwork really? It was just like a dark tower. Like, it didn't feel very green to me. I don't know about what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, maybe it should have had him at the top, like with a big axe, like, screaming out to the heavens. But yeah, no, the art wise, I don't think it did. I think Command Tower could do with having something that's a bit brighter, a little bit more resonant, rather than feeling like most of the artworks are a bit muted. And it's like, this is your command tower. Like, it should be like a beacon of hope and pride and strength, not squirreled away and hidden in the shadows.
Yeah, for sure. I'm aware that we are recording this episode right as the week of metal for the Kaldheim. I'm going to call them pre-previews, because these aren't the actual previews for Kaldheim. This is like a week of WotC going, oh, hey, check it out. Here's like a taster for the taster of the next set. So I'm aware people have already moved on from Commander Legends and Commander Collection Green and are now talking about Kaldheim, rightly so, because it looks really fucking sweet. But I kind of refuse to just throw away ideas that we've had for episodes where you want to talk about things just to keep talking about the new hype.
You've got to have a moment of reflection. You've got to look, you can't just be looking constantly ahead. You've got to stop for a second. Like, Kaldheim will be here in a month. It's fine. We've got plenty of time to talk about it. Stop spreading out the preview set every single week. There's a little bit of dopamine hitting your system. Okay, just stop it.
Just stop it. It was so funny. Like, I was listening to a bunch of different podcasts kind of just before all the previews for Kaldheim started, and the thing that every one of them said, no matter what it was about, was, we have 2 months until Kaldheim.
And then like, nah, mate, 2 days.
Nah, mate, here we go. Full on, weekend, let's go. Like, we've got like a preview trailer, we've had like metal bands, we've got it all. So we will get on to talking about first impressions of Kaldheim at some point. There's actually not that much time left in the year, and I know we've got a couple of other ideas we want to do for episodes. But for right now, we're taking a fucking breather and we're talking about Commander collections. So if you want to get your Kaldheim fix, go back onto Twitter or Reddit or wherever you get your Kaldheim fix from. Cool. All right, let's dive into it. So we took 2 colors each because that's how we did it. So we are going to be doing white, blue, black, and red. So obviously green has already been taken up. And yeah, I guess we're going to talk through what our individual picks would be if WotC gave us the keys to the design team for the next Commander collections and why. Again, we're not really referencing monetary value. I think in some of my picks, I did kind of go, well, it's an expensive card which deserves a reprint, therefore I put it in over another choice that I had or something. But that's about as deep as I went. I don't know how deep you went into it, into actual like monetary value.
I did at least have a look at what like comparison value. Like, so for example, I looked at what the price for the cards would have been for the Commander Collection Green, and then how much they were like afterwards, like from the Collection Green, if you were just to buy them from that set, and then kind of did an approximation, because I feel like, I know they're not going to MRSP these, but I feel like they won't put widely differing values in them. Like, you won't make the white one like an average value of 30 and then the blue one an average value of like 200 or something, even without the MRSP, because that's just not really not fair. But I feel like they would set them all at a similar price band to a degree, so I've kept them within a certain margin. I'm not throwing things like survival of the fittest level cards into them, but I didn't I was flexible. I'm not being like a matching price per price per se.
Sure. Cool. Well, let's jump into it then. So let's start with you. So you took white and blue, and I took black and red. which I offered you to pick the colours, and you said for me to pick the colours. Then when I picked black and red, you weren't very happy about it because you wanted to do those colours, I think.
Well, no, I
But
just knew if I offered, that's what you'd go for, and I was like, I don't want to say white and blue and give them up. I want to give you the opportunity. Maybe you want to do one of the other ones, but you didn't.
I
It's fine. I'll take the best and worst color. That's fine.
I almost picked white. I almost did white and black, but I thought that was maybe a bit too on brand for me because I'm always doing white black stuff. So I thought,
And I'm always doing blue red, so yeah, that might have made more sense. But hey,
there you go. Cool. All right, let's start with you then. You this is your Commander Collection green white, as told by Nathan Cancel. What did you chuck in?
So I first identified like the cards that were in like say the collection green. So I think say for example like Silver Library was like the premier card, like quote unquote money card as it were. Then I identified there was a tutor effect. Maybe they'll see those across the others. There was a Planeswalker, a Legend, and then two what I kind of consider to be like just good standard staple cards, and that was Made in Progress and CWB. So taking that as a framework, I had at the top of the list for like say the big premier card that would be in the set was Teferi's Protection. Sure. I feel like that recently has been probably the quote unquote boogeyman, like the Cyclonic Rift of white, as it were. It's a really good value card. It's been reprinted once. Obviously, it's just had a secret layer out as well, but the value is still good and it's still very powerful. The only issue with that I find is that it's a bit narrow on its flavor, whereas Silver Library can be flexed around. Teferi's Protection can't be. So maybe instead we go something like Land Tax if you wanted something that had a bit more flexible flavor. But I think Teferi's Protection is probably your premier white card that I can think of that would round off the set. Something you definitely want to get just for that card if it wasn't for everything else that was in there.
Sure.
I think flavor wise, you maybe see a reflection of like Teferi now. So obviously we've seen Teferi over the years, and the Teferi's Protection we actually didn't have any flavor text. If we could add some flavor text to that, give his kind of a voice in that moment, that would be quite nice to see because we didn't get one otherwise.
Sure.
I have for then the tutor slot, as it were. I think Enlightened Tutor is a good fit and a good comparison to say Worldly Tutor. Cards that are widely played, are quite good, very much need reprinting. Enlightened Tutors are available, and say like the easiest one to get hold of is White Border, which some people don't like. I mean, at this point, our question: do we want this to be a tutor slot? Do we want every collection to have a tutor? Like philosophically, is that a good thing?
I put a tutor in my Commander Collection black, which I'll talk about, but I didn't put one in red because I could have had Gamble, but I didn't put one in red.
I guess it's your only option really at that point, unless you do say anything. Well, this is the thing I said, is that maybe instead of having to say something generic like Enlightened Tutor, which actually you could add then new flavor onto, because I'm going to have my premier legendary in this be Avacyn. Maybe the Enlightened Tutor represents someone of faith who finally gets like the angel answering their prayer, and that's the way that they are enlightened. In the same kind of way that in Theros they did the enchantment tutor, where it's the hand reaching down and it shows that benevolence and that cross between mortals and immortal. I feel like that might be a nice representation. Otherwise, if you want to do something that's maybe more flavorful specifically to white mechanically, you could do say Recruiter of the Guard or something like that. But I think it mirrors the Worldly Tutor quite well to have Enlightened Tutor, and again you could add an updated flavor to it, so it feels more resonant of a plane. Rather than just being generic dude smiling, holding a flower thing.
Yeah, for sure.
For Planeswalker, this was quite tricky because I think I looked through and there weren't many Planeswalkers that jumped out at me apart from say if you're going to go by comparison to Freyalise, you could say Nahiri, but Nahiri isn't really resonant of being like a white Planeswalker anymore. I mean, she is red and white, but she's definitely specifically like that Boris feeling.
She's multicolored for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I went with Elspeth Sun's Champion. Not only is she currently relevant, she's also quite a strong effect for Commander, making 3/1/1s, destroying all creatures powerful or greater. It's nice. Those are strong effects for a Planeswalker, which is why I chose it over say something like Gideon or Ajani, whose abilities are probably a little bit weaker and a little less used and functional. Like you want the cards in the collection to be cards that you can use to good effect. Also, she's recently. Go ahead.
I was going to say also the choice for Freyalise in Commander Collection Green was kind of cool because they didn't go with say Nissa, which would have been the premier, green Planeswalker or whatever. They went with one that was actually a little bit more subversive. So I think going with Ajani or Gideon would have been a bit too obvious. I think Elspeth sits quite nicely there. Like I didn't go for Chandra or Liliana, for example. I went a different way with that.
Yes,
so
good.
I think that's pretty good.
The other thing is to consider is that Freyalise was maybe put in the collection green because elves are going to be a thing going through into Kaldheim. There might have been an understanding that we're going to release these new black-green legends in Commander Legends set. We're going to have green and black elves supported within Kaldheim. Maybe we put an elf commander that is more difficult to get hold of in the Commander Collection green. So, those elf collectors have everything they need within like the last year printed kind of thing. There might have been a mind to that. I don't know what's going to be printed the set after Commander Collection White comes out. So we're going to go with Elspeth Sun's Champion.
Yeah, cool.
So with the Legends, I think Omnath was a really good choice because it's just very, very green. Obviously, it even has the word like, it did something that green hadn't done yet, but felt very much like a green thing, that obviously mana not emptying from the mana pool between phases. I went for Avacyn, Angel of Hope as my flagship legendary. I really can't think of a better commander for like a mono white, signifying like what white can do that's powerful and strong, and also decently valuable. Because I mean, the top most played one is SRAM. And as much as SRAM's fine, he plays towards, more of the aggressive equipment-y kind of Boris-y side of white, whereas I think that Avacyn represents that mono-white feeling a little bit better. I think she's a very strong card. Again, you can't reprint that card enough, I don't think. So I think it's a good idea. And also I liked how we've seen Avacyn reprinted recently with new like artwork that shows her more benevolent side, not feeling super badass. Maybe as much as Elspeth is also a badass chicory, so I feel like we could do something that feels a bit more benevolent, a little bit more a little less attacking soldiers and more, faith that's actually like rewarded, that kind of theme for the set. In that same fashion, now we're moving on to kind of like the two, I'm going to say quote unquote like filler cards, cards that are kind of like staple filler cards. And I had a choice on both of these. The first one was Karmic Guide or Mother of Runes. I think I like Karmic Guide more if we're fitting into the Avacyn kind of side of things. Having this angelic benevolent feeling. Again, it's a very cool card. It needs reprinting. It does a very solid white effect. You see it in a lot of decks. And I think it's a nice strong, powerful option. Mum, again, is very quintessential. Everyone knows Mum. Again, maybe you see some new artwork. Maybe it represents someone on, like, say, Innistrad, who's looking after, like, their Gavany, something like that, if you want to tie it all together into the Innistrad kind of feel. But I feel like you could also do that with Karmic Guide as well, basing all of this on Innistrad. Maybe Elspeth is the outlier, but then again, Freyalise never went to Zendikar or Kamigawa, so fight me. And then when it comes to like the last one, this was something I was quite torn on, and that was do you go for like a typical good commander card like Serra Ascendant, which again feels very tied together with Angel feel, or do we then show the other side of the coin and go with Wrath of God, which I think is probably one of the more premier and obvious white staples of Commander. I mean, no, you're not going for something like Day of Judgment. I want actual OG Wrath of God with some new artwork, some new flavor text, and feeling that, that cross, maybe it has Avacyn artwork in it, this idea that, yes, okay, everything can be benevolent and good, but there's also the wrathful side of God and religion. And that idea of Innistrad, that pull and pull of being pious, but also having your faith sometimes questioned and pulled out from underneath you, especially with everything that happened with Avacyn turning bad, turning all the angels against humanity. That must have been a terrible time. So it'd be nice to see this, that maybe kind of represented within this collection. My version of the Sol Ring would be literally like, maybe it would have the sun representing it's like forged in the Mage's hands, like as from the sunlight, you can see the sun like through the Sol Ring, almost like an eclipse effect. I could see that. And then I wouldn't mind for Command Tower having a posthumous quote from Mr. Beef Slab Gideon, talking about the maybe the folly of following your faith to the end, but also the great good it can do even after you're gone. Maybe some kind of push pull aspect, because he obviously went through a very interesting arc, having to deal with his own humility, losing all of his friends, and then eventually sacrificing himself for the greater good. So yeah. Nice. That's my collection green. Looking at, like, say, notable omissions, things like maybe we could have gone Federation on instead of Avacyn, but that doesn't feel very white. I know she is the white Praetor, but she's not that kind of white. Same with Heliod's Songcrowned, the bastard. He ain't getting in my collection after what he did to Elspeth. Or you could have maybe him and Elspeth in the same collection. You had that dichotomy again represented. It depends on how deep they want to go on the flavour for these.
It's interesting. I don't think with collection green they really tied together an overarching flavour like the spellbooks, though. I think they did just go for individual cards that felt quintessentially green. I think they pulled from a lot of different places in Magic as opposed to doing a storyline in that product.
Yeah, of course. Well, this is why I had say quote unquote flexibility. But yeah, I think white. I mean, the problem with white is that a lot of it's real good simple things like Path to Exile, Source Plowshares, and Sun Titan, which get reprinted to death. And unfortunately, white's pool is sadly a lot shallower than other colours in terms of, like, okay, let's pick some premier staples. It's pretty much easy. Like, all of these were things you'd pretty much say off the top of the bat anyway, so it's not particularly say difficult to pick out the ones that I think are in need of being reprinted and put more into circulation again.
Yeah, sure. Well, I like that. I think those choices are pretty cool, and yeah, good that you didn't go down the Gideon or Ajani route, because kind of boring, if I'm honest with you. I quite like Elspeth more,
Mm-hmm.
especially in sort of today's storylines. Cool. Well, I did Commander Collection Black, so let's go through Commander Collection Black. As my sort of face card, if you like, as my legendary creature, I went for Ghoul Caller Gisa or Gisa. I never know how to pronounce that G. Is it a hard G or a soft G?
I think it's Gisa. No, I think it's Gisa. Call it Gisa.
Is it Gisa and Gerelf or Gisa and Gerelf or Gisa and Gerelf? I
Or
never know.
is it Geralf?
Who knows? Whatever. Her. That one. The
Yes.
one that's not Liliana. Right? So yeah. So I went for Gorkisa Geralf. Ghoul Caller Gisa. My lord. This is a very expensive card. Like, if you look at it, it's one of the top mono black commanders, because obviously zombies are very good, and she's pretty much one of the better zombie commanders. She's getting up there in price. So this was one of the ones where I went, okay, that's one which probably needs a reprint. And she's a super popular commander. I kind of feel like she's one of those characters on Innistrad that hasn't yet had a lot of leg room. Like, she has had storylines dedicated to her and her brother, but I kind of just feel like, yeah, she probably could do a lot more. And again, a lot of people don't play that commander and don't play zombies. Zombies as a tribe in general kind of gets shunted out, because a lot of the zombie staples and a lot of the zombie commanders are actually very expensive nowadays for whatever reason. I think a lot of them is because the better ones are quite old cards as well. So yeah, I kind of feel like to reinvigor zombies, which are, in my head, along with vampires, like the premier black creature type, I think, yeah, we need to get some more zombies out there. In terms of lore, I mean, she obviously needs to still be on Innistrad. She's not a planeswalker or anything. But I kind of feel we need to see like a much more whimsical side of her. I often feel of Gisa, when I've sort of seen her in storylines or in artwork, that she's the kind of Harley Quinn to Liliana's Poison Ivy, you know, where she's kind of more crazy. She's very full on, as if Gisa went so far down the necromancy route that she kind of lost any sort of sense of decorum, even though she is from like quite a fancy family in the lore. So I'd want to see a much more whimsical side of her, maybe even almost cartoonish on the artwork. I'd like to think of Jesper Ising's work on Munitions Expert, which is the red-black goblin, where it's got a big witch's hat and he's flying out these kind of like crazy missiles out of the artwork. I'd like to see that side of Gisa, because I think we're almost there. There's been a couple of artworks where she's been a little more crazy looking, and she's never seen as being like a super serious character. She's definitely more pantomime. But yeah, I'd like to see something more like that, I think. My next slot, this was the only toss-up I had between, well, should I put this in or should I put this in? And I kind of like put both down on the list. But the card I'm including is Exsanguinate for my kind of big spell. The other option would have been Twilight Prophet. Twilight Prophet, being a mythic from Ixalan block, is like 20 quid nowadays, which is crazy. I managed to pull one, and is actually in a lot more decks than you think, because so many black decks nowadays, especially if they're reliant on things like white, for example, deal with life gain and life loss. And I kind of feel like Twilight Prophet is one of these kind of sleeper hits, which people don't have in every one of their decks because it's expensive, but would if they could. Exsanguinate isn't as expensive, but I kind of feel is sort of ubiquitous. Ironically, I don't run Exsanguinate in my Karlov deck. I do Debt to the Deathless instead, my big X spell. Do you run Exsanguinate in many decks?
I run both in Ailey.
You run both in Ailey. Well, there you go then, yeah. And obviously it's always that card. Like if you watch any of the older like Command Zone videos or any deck tech which has life gain, life loss, they'll usually mention Exsanguinate as a big finisher or an X spell or something. So I went with Exsanguinate because I do think it is probably due for a bit of a reprint. I would like to see on the artwork for this one, I was thinking about what moments, for all of these cards, I thought what moments or what characters in the multiverse have we not seen flex or not seen represented on a card in a way that would be good to have in multiple decks. Like, they don't need to be big mythic spells or whatever. And I kind of want to see more of Yahenni or Yahenni from Kaladesh, the Etherborn vampire that helped out the Renegades during their time on Kaladesh. Because Yahenni's a vampire, and the Etherborn are like the vampire race on Kaladesh. So I quite like, instead of having these quite feral vampires on the original Exsanguinate art, to have this more sort of regal socialite vampire, and maybe they're draining a big consulate battalion that's coming to arrest them, because during the storyline, he discovers that the Etherborn can use these life-draining powers to extend their own existence. So yeah,
maybe it's that moment. maybe that's the
Yeah,
moment that you have on the card, that moment
yeah, I
that they
agree.
realise.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Yenny card doesn't necessarily deal with life gain, life loss per se. It's more about +1/+1 counters when things die. So that's how their card is represented, about getting more buff when things die. But I think, yeah, you could probably bend the rules slightly and have it be more of a life gain, life loss type thing. For my tutor in black, because I kind of feel like black, out of all of the colors, probably deserves a tutor slot. Because black, weirdly, I know not a lot of people think of black being the tutor color, but black definitely has the best tutors in the game. I didn't go with demonic tutor because that's actually had a couple of reprints recently. I didn't go with vampiric tutor because that's literally had a reprint in Commander Legends. I went with diabolic intent, which is the
Mm.
tutor where you need to sacrifice a creature as part of its casting cost to get something into your hand. So it's demonic tutor with a sacrifice creature thing. It did have a reprint in Battle Bond, in which it showed an Azra on the artwork. I think the skew I'd put on this one, because the Azra, although they're very cool, are very specific to Kylum and Battle Bond at the moment. So I don't think it fits in every deck. And I think instead what we could see is we could see an Innistrad cult summoning up a demon, perhaps Grizzlebrand or one of the older demons. This is the idea of sacrificing something. There's the sacrificial altar, diabolic intent, fits with the name. I think that's pretty cool. I think I quite like that idea. Maybe something like the Bud Cook cards, Village Cannibals and Village Rites, where it's from the first person view and it's all the cannibals like sacrificing the person to some kind of cultic ritual. I think that's kind of cool. So that's what I would do for the tutor slots. Thrilling Encore is my next card. Thrilling Encore is it the sorcery or is it an instant? I can't quite remember. Yes, yeah, Thrilling Encore. It's a 4 and a black for put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. And it's an instant. So this is a card that I've seen in not actually that many decks, although on something like EDH Rec, which is where I did a lot of this research for this episode on, you do see it in like lots of decks worldwide, but in our playgroup I haven't seen it very often. But every time it's used to such devastating degree. I think it's pretty cool. This again was a Battle Bond card that I think the artwork where it shows two combatants going out into an arena, one with a blue sword, one with a red, and one of the combatants is a goblin, which has the very distinctive Kylum, like almost like wing ears, the really like broad sweeping ears of the goblins in Kylum. I think it's very specific, like the flavor and feel to that, and the Thrilling Encore refers to the idea of like an extra round for the fans to see like more of their like combatants fighting against each other. But I think a Thrilling Encore set on Ravnica would be a really good idea for this Commander Collection Black. And I was in my head thinking of seeing a stage on a Rakdos like theatre stage with Jury introducing back Judith, the Scourge Diva, back onto the stage. And to kind of keep the getting things back from the graveyard, like all your creatures are dead aspect, it could be from the point of view of the audience, but you see in all the rafters of the audience, like most of the audience are dead or maimed. So it's like the Rakdos show is like getting its encore because they've killed everyone and they're coming back out for some sort of like macabre finisher to their show. I think that would be very cool because there are a lot of there's going to be a lot of Blim decks out there. Decks that were already running Judith are going to get like reinvigorated. This kind of Rakdos idea of aristocrats and sacrificing things is pretty strong. So yeah, I think Thrilling Encore would be a really good thing for this. The last non-Sol Ring Command Tower card I put in is Cabal Coffers. How has this card not had a reprint? Cabal Coffers is a Commander staple. Should it be the price that it is? Should it be so rare? It's like 30-40 quid.
Yeah, I feel like it's a meme at this point. I feel like they know. They just keep forgetting. They're like, oh, did we forget again to put it in the last set? Oh, okay, that's a shame. Like, don't put Vampiric just for once. Don't do Vampiric Tutor and do Cabal Coffers. Yes, fuck it, make it mythic. Whatever. I don't care. Just print more. Just print more of them. God damn it.
It is pretty infuriating because obviously it only really shines when it's paired up with. Was it Tomb of Yawgmoth?
Urborg, yeah.
Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, yeah. Which they did reprint in Double Masters. So where's our Cabal Coffers? Like, even that card, like, even Urborg isn't that great without Cabal Coffers. Like, they definitely sync up together. So I think now that they've done a reprint of Urborg, they need to do a reprint of Cabal Coffers. And as much as I do love that original artwork and that original sort of mood of that card, where it's this kind of big empty stone cavern and a big stain on the wall looks like someone who's kind of cowering in fear, it doesn't really show you what it is. Like, it's one of those very early like artworks in Magic where it was very impressionistic, and it was just kind of, it was almost like the artwork almost was more of a feeling than an actual showing of what the Kobold coffers were or are. So I think that's what I'd want. I want a reprint with something maybe a bit more literal on it, like how they did the reprint for Urborg, where the Tomb of Yawgmoth was like a shrine to Yawgmoth, and you had the Yawgmoth mask and the Phyrexian oil like pouring down from it. I think that's what I'd want. For my Sol Ring, I'd want it to be just nice and cut and dry. I'd want it to be a Sol Ring, almost maybe a literal Sol Ring, but in the vaults of an Orzhov like bank or something. I'd want it to be the greed aspect of black. I was thinking maybe doing like, oh, it's a ring on a sacrificial altar, but actually I kind of feel like that's maybe a bit obvious. So I'd rather it was maybe some precious ring that's deep in like Karlov's personal vault or something, and it'll have a flavor text that kind of denotes that, you know, the Orzhov keep things for themselves. I think that would be quite cool. And then for my command tower, I'm going back to the Innistrad well. I'd want to see maybe. Oh, I've done accidental flavor ties here. I'd want to see Gerolf, Geese's brother. I'd want to see his experimentation tower. Do you know the artwork on? Is it Perfect Storm? Storm something. There's a blue enchantment that makes zombies cost 0.
Rooftop Storm.
Rooftop Storm, thank you. And it's like an old Frankenstein film. It's like Hammer Horror. It's Frankenstein bringing the monster up to the roof to get hit by lightning to power his machine and bring life to it. So I'd want to see that. Like, I quite like the idea of command towers being literal towers, because that's what it is on both the artworks that we have now. But just more like reflecting of the flavor of who would be using it, or what kind of mana the command tower would have as its base. I know it taps for all colors of mana, whatever. But yeah, so that's what I'd want. I'd want Hammer Horror Frankenstein Gerolf's experimentation tower with lightning all over it. I think that'd be pretty cool. So that's my.
Well, I guess the other point is the different towers do different things based on who's commanding them, right? Because that's how it works. So they only tap for the colours of your commander, so it feels like they should be towers that kind of adapt. So this is the time to put some extra flavour in them. I mean, obviously you have to make them generic otherwise, because it could be for anyone. But these are specific, right? And I feel like they could lean further into that. Yeah, agreed.
I didn't put a Planeswalker in. It's just worth noting. I didn't put a Planeswalker into this one because other than the Liliana Planeswalkers, and I love Liliana as a character, I think out of all of the Gatewatch people, she's actually had the best story arc, like overall, and even on the cards, she's had like the best kind of journey and what she can do. But she's done. She's had every card under the sun. We'll see her a million times in the future. I don't need another reprint of her. The only other one I looked at that's been played in EDH that would be good for Commander was Sorin Markov, OG Sorin Markov. And I hate that card. I hate that card. If I was given the conceit by Wizards to curate a Commander collection, I've tried not to put too many personal things in here. But yeah, the Planeswalker, I haven't put Planeswalker. Instead, what I put in, because I've missed out a card here, and this is the one that I put in instead of the Planeswalker, is I put in the enchantment No Mercy, which is the enchantment. Yeah, this is
a personal choice, isn't it?
This is a personal choice. So I've built a Belb deck recently, or a Belby, I never know how to pronounce it. And I want to have some rattlesnake effects in there. And I bought the card Dread recently, because Dread is the spirit incarnation that says whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature. And I was like, oh, what other cards have this effect? And the original one from Urza's Saga is No Mercy, which is a black enchantment which does that effect. It's like 30 quid for that effect, whereas Dread as a creature is like a $5. And it's only because it's only been printed in that set, right? And I feel like that is such a black way of doing things. Like, you have your blue and your white, like your Ghostly Prison and your Propagandas, which don't come at me because I'll attack you back. Green doesn't do defensive that much, so I guess it doesn't have that. And red also, again, doesn't do defensive that much. But black does. It just does it in a more kind of like dealy kind of way. And I like the idea of going, you could hit me, that's fine. But if you do, all your creatures are going to be destroyed. You know, it's not controlling you, it's just giving you a consequence to your arrogance. And yeah, I think No Mercy would be a really good one for that. I'd want to see Vraska on the cover art, because I realised in the Commander Collection Green, a lot of the artworks, even for the sorceries and instants, showed legendary creatures on them, which some people didn't like very much. Like, it had, oh my god, what's his name?
Yisan.
Yisan, there we go. They had Yisan, Wandering Bard, and Wildly Tutor, for example. So for this one, I would want to see Vraska on No Mercy. And I'd want to see her in the process of using her Gorgon Stare on like a group of people. So maybe you're looking at Vraska, and Vraska's beams are coming at you, and in the kind of middle ground of the painting, it's all the people being turned into stone in the moment. Because we've seen a lot of Vraska and a lot of Vraska on cards, but we only have a couple examples of her actually using her Gorgon powers. And yeah, I think that'd be really cool. No Mercy with Vraska on it.
Yeah, I guess it's very representative of her original card, where you plussed her, and if you hit her, then that creature would be destroyed. So that works
exactly.
perfectly.
Yeah, that was genuinely my thought. And I know she's green black, but we have seen enough of her in just mono black in Ixalan block. Her Planeswalker deck had a mono black Vraska, and a lot of the mono black cards had her on it as well. So I think she'd be better fitted in this set than say Nahiri would be in the mono white set.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's my Commander Collection black.
Okay, well, we've gone from one that I found quite easy to one that I found a bit more difficult. Turns out blue's got some really good staples, and it turns out they're all quite like polarizingly expensive. Again, like this is why I said there was some mind paid to money, because I was struggling to find cards that were in white that were extortionate. You know, we're not talking about like Caracas levels of card, but there's a lot of cards in blue that I feel like need reprints, and you obviously need to be represent the color, but are just way outside what I'm willing to put. Like you can't put a Force of Will in here reasonably. No. You just can't do that. Even, and again, arguably that's not necessarily a commander staple anyway. So enough preamble. The premier card I think for the collection, I feel like it has to be Cyclonic Rift. Like I feel like in the same way that Teferi's Protection is the quintessential white card, I feel like Cyclonic Rift is just the quintessential blue commander card in terms of like an effect. I know
people will hate it. People will. I mean, I'm not one of them. Again, this is going to be my second hot take of the episode. I actually don't mind Cyclonic Rift at all.
No,
I think it's perfectly fine.
It's a 7 mana instant. It's a lot of mana to hold up. Like, you know,
it is. Yeah.
I still don't particularly. It's not that I don't quote unquote like them, but I still feel like neither of the Cyclonic Rift artworks that exist speak to me enough that I haven't seen it done in a way that's a bit more like I'd like to see a Mu Yangling version of Cyclonic Rift.
Sure, like she was on Flood of Tears.
Exactly, like that, but like a tsunami level, you know, that kind of idea. Sure. I'd like to see that kind of thing, put it in a context of a Planeswalker maybe using it. I think, again, you can't go wrong with putting Cyclonic Rift in. In the same frame, I feel like I don't really like Mystical Tutor here, because I feel like blue, because it has a card draw, I feel like blue tutors are a little bit cheap, especially when it's, because I don't get me wrong, I play them, but I think I like things like I feel like Mystical Tutor.
You really are a commander player, aren't you?
I know, I'm the worst. Don't do this. I mean, I'm gonna do it, but don't do this. So I like things like Mystical Teachings, where it has like where it's like got the flashback and you can only get specific types of cards. Yes, again, Mystical Tutor is still narrow, and it's to the top of the library rather than to hand, so I guess I have a bad point. But I think instead here, what you do is you take this opportunity to reskin Ristic Studies in a new border, give new artwork, new frame. Again, if you do something, I would love to see a young Teferi learning. Like the original Teferi Disruptive Student shows him at school. I would like to see of that age kind of Teferi learning, you know, just studying. That'd be great to me. I think that'd be a good opportunity to, as I say, update the card. It's a solid staple. Again, all of these, no one likes blue cards. None of these are nice cards, let's be honest. But I feel like, again, it's a good card. People pay it. Do you pay one?
Do you know what? I never pay the one. I never pay it. I will do so with Smothering Tithe. I tend to pay the 2 with Smothering Tithe more than I pay the 1 with Ristic Study. I don't know why.
Because mana seems worse. The thing that busts me about Smothering Tithe is you have to pay 2 mana for them to get 1. Like that's where that seems broken. I will say the best way to kill a blue player is let them draw the deck, you know. Just make sure you have a counter for the Thassa's Oracle, because I've lost to that a few times recently and it doesn't feel great. So then moving on, so I still have maintained a Planeswalker slot. I was going to originally go for the Teferi Temporal Archmage, the commander, one that can be your commander, because it is a strong, like kind of staple, as it were, like commander for the set. As a good Planeswalker, untapping 4 permanents. It has a lot of loops with things like the Chain Veil. But in the end, I actually went for something, and I went well enough for Jace the Mind Sculptor. Because I think that it's reaching a point now where it's putting it into products like this. It's cheap enough that it can now be put back into more circulation. I played one recently and it's still got a little bit of you're that kind of player. I'm like, well, no, I just happened to play in World Wake. I mean, surely it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't have such a high threshold, I think. I'd like to see Jace with new fucking artwork. Give me a Jason Mind Sculptor with new artwork. That's the only reason I'm putting in the collection, because I feel like they have to do that, right? So that's
the
my
only
personal
other
take.
the only new artwork that we've seen for that particular card was in that stupid Planeswalker collection ultimate edition like product, and it was the same thing. He was doing the same pose and the same magic. It was the same. It was just basically like a shot for shot remake of the original card. They didn't do anything new with it. So yeah, something completely new would be cool to see.
Would be really nice. I'd like to see that a lot. Thank you. And then we come to like the flagship legendary. Again, controversially, the two options I have are both like really horrible cards. The first option I had was Jin, just Axios, a card that is probably a bit too mean. So I somehow went for the slightly less powerful Urza. And I only say Urza because the options for blue, strangely enough, if you're looking through like their like command, like the best commanders for blue, there aren't a lot of them that are particularly, say, quote unquote, like amazing. You know, you've got things like Talrand, Emery, Barol was the other one that I thought was quintessentially a blue card, but the commander decks that kind of breeds are pretty toxic. And I understand the same can be said for something like, say, Jintaxius, but I mean, all of the other options are fairly underwhelming. You don't get into, say, things like Thassers that you start to get into interesting things that are kind of still worth, you know, enough money to put into a collection like this without feeling cheated. But I don't feel like Thasser, as much as she is a cool blue representation of in a character, she's very tied to the sea and very tied to Theros. She doesn't feel like multiversal to blue, whereas Urza is the multiversal blue, you know, card, I think, and legend. And as much as he is very powerful, I wouldn't mind seeing another version of him when he's in a story beat moment from back in the day. It's nice now we have a card version of him. We could see more of him actually, because there was so much Urza artwork back in the day that we never got a card for him. Now we've actually got a card for him. Let's give him new artwork, maybe surrounded by all of the Titans, something, I don't know, something that's a bit more a little less, I've got some golems in the background in the smoky.
Yeah, for sure.
You can barely see my features, that kind of thing. Maybe again, if you can fit it into that ridiculously jumbled text box, maybe a touch of flavor text, like a single word or a single kind of words just to finish off his Urziness. That'd be quite nice. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Yeah. Then we got to the two, like, say, quote unquote filler staples. This was, I want to put a counterspell in there. I feel like that would be remiss not to. I was originally going to settle on something like, say, Swan Song, but I don't feel like it has quite enough flavor to it. So I'm going to go with Pact of Negation, because I think it's a strong one. It doesn't get reprinted very often. I know it has had a semi-recent reprinting, but it'd be nice to see another one. I think that's the kind of card that's fair, a fair free counterspell. 0 mana on the turn that you counter something, but then you've got to pay for the investment afterwards. It's not something like Mana Drain, or say Force of Will, or Force of Pact of Negation, or Force of Negation, or any of these new ones that they've got that are like free and actually free. Like, this is free, you pay a little bit later. Fierce Guardianship, exactly. Like, all of this nonsense I feel like is a bit too much leaning into the oppressive nature of blue counter spells, where I feel like Pact of Negation's fair. It's getting up in price a little bit. Again, it'd be nice to see another artwork of it, because we've only seen that one artwork used throughout all of them, so it'd be nice again to have a little update. The other staple, I was originally going to say Consecrated Sphinx, but at that point the blue one still cost an absolute fortune, so I'm going to go with Propaganda. I was going to say Mystic Remora, because maybe we need an updated artwork for it, but I feel like Rhystic Studied needs the update more, and needs more circulation, because Mystic Remora still isn't very expensive, very difficult to get hold of, plus Feed the Fish. If you are going to reprint it and do no artwork, do you still have the fish in the artwork, even though it has or do you not? So screw all of that, we'll do Propaganda. Give you new artwork for Propaganda. Again, I don't like the weird like face one as much, and I wouldn't mind seeing the new frame with the old artwork with Khan stuck in a cage. That'd be quite cool to see.
You don't like the artwork where it's all the people with the symbol on their eyes?
No, I don't know why. I feel, for me, repeated patterns and only repeated patterns in a frame of Magic card feels weird. I don't know why. I've only just realised it. Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I'm not going to deny it.
Each to their own. It's just interesting. I think, yeah, that's cool. It's interesting that you cite that as being like one of the big reasons you'd put it in the set is to redo the artwork. When it's something that I really like about the card. Yes, it's interesting. What would you do with it then?
So I'd like to see them do something that hugs back to the old artwork. So I wouldn't mind seeing. I liked the Khan in a cage with Volrath, kind of jibing him. But I wouldn't mind seeing the way that my mages can basically turn you, like actively turn like a crowd away by like kind of convincing them of something they're not thinking. Like imagine like seeing Jace actually using his mind abilities. I know he doesn't want to do it because it's bad and consent, which is obviously true. But it'd be interesting to see a side of him when he's actually doing this. Say like the moment where he tries to like speak to Nahiri and control her mind, that kind of thing. I wouldn't mind seeing that effect of blue because you don't get to see it that often in action. You see it in things like mind control and stuff like that, but you very rarely see a planeswalker actively doing it. So I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Cool.
Soul Ring. I didn't actually think of too much about the Soul Ring. I wouldn't mind seeing something like Coral. Maybe you could have like a Coral Soul Ring of some variety.
Ooh,
Otherwise,
yeah, that'd be very cool.
Yeah, otherwise, as much blue is very artifact related in terms of a lot of blue effects work with artifacts that you don't necessarily see, say, like water, weather magic, which is the other side of blue, or mind magic being necessarily artifact based. So maybe it's more technical. Maybe it's in like a lab. Maybe it's in like say like a Phyrexian lab or something, and they've orchestrated one that's a bit more like new and shiny rather than being archaic. But those are the two sides. I don't know if I'd rather see one that was more coral based or one that was like more sleek and like refined. But you could go in either direction. I'd be pretty happy with it. And then Command Tower, it has to be Urza's Tower, obviously. I'd like to see the version that we see in the MTGO exclusive artwork. I think it was Ralph Worsley off the top of my head who did those ones. I wouldn't mind seeing again a more fantastical version of his tower rather than the industrial version.
Nice. Yes, I agree. I think that'd be very cool. Yeah. I think you need that. I think the command towers in general, maybe it is a benefit that they're a bit more generic than not. But I do feel like you're having more specific ones. That was my problem with the one in the Commander Collection green. I think that's it. I think the Eldraine Brawl Deck one and the kind of standard Command Tower artworks, they do work because they are more generic and they can fit in anywhere. But then when they did a very specific one in the Commander Collection green, they had a chance to make it really like on the nose, and they chose to make it a bit more ambiguous than they needed to and just stapled some Garrett flavor text on there. Unless there's some flavor relevance that I'm completely missing, which is very, probable. Then yeah, I think you need to be a lot more explicit with your choices on that one, for sure.
Especially when you're doing something like this, where you're taking a card that people play a lot and and going out of their way to get a version of it. You want that version to feel better, and it isn't necessarily a marked improvement over the original. I think with the one that came in the collection green.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, then this is the last one. Then this is my Commander Collection Red. So the first up, this is another favorite card of mine, and it's actually one that I think is gaining in popularity a lot, which is why I put it in here. In terms of reprint value, maybe I did put a lot more stock in reprint value than I originally sort of exclaimed I did. But this is an exactly expensive card. This in general, probably just looking at it off the top of my head, is probably the least like money packed out of all of them, because if you haven't noticed, guys, like red staples in EDH are cheap as shit compared to any other color. Like you tend to get quite nichey expensive cards. Like when I recently looked at the feasibility of doing a mana burn deck with the new mana burn commander that's just come out, some of the older red cards, and especially all the pingers and all the mana burn cards, are quite expensive because they're very old and they need reprints. I didn't include them in this one because that's quite a niche strategy for red. So I didn't think that they deserved reprints in the collection per se. But generally speaking, red cards, if you're just going for what do most Commander players play, are actually quite cheap. So there's not a lot of big money reprints in here. There's a couple that are like 20 quid-ish. There's one that I thought about putting in. I thought about putting in, is it Volshot Molten Pinnacle? Volcut Molten Pinnacle, which is the
Valakut,
Valakut, which is
Lightning Bolt land.
Yeah, exactly. But that recently had a reprint in Zendikar as a whatever they're called now, the Expedition, not the Showcase or whatever else. So I didn't put that in here. Instead, the first card that I put in is one that I said, a lot of people tend to play nowadays because Goad is actually an effect that I think is getting quite popular. And that card is Disrupt Decorum. It's the 4-mana spell that means that every creature your opponent control must attack this turn if they are able, or until your next turn. It is the big Goad card. Like I know they did a push in the Ikoria commander sets for doing a Goad card in each color with those enchantments, but red I think is pretty much the quintessential Goad mechanic. I love the artwork on Disrupt Decorum as it is. I think it's very cool and very evocative of what they want to do, but if they wanted to do something else, I think a good moment to pick in the canon of Magic history is the Carnfall event from Tarkir.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think, like, would it be whimsical? Like, would I pick an artwork that would be like goblins crashing a party, or maybe something more generic? But actually, I think it's the idea of disrupt decorum is turning a civilized meeting and turning it on its head, which is what the original artwork was trying to invoke. And the Carnfall event, for people that aren't familiar, is where the ancient Khans of Tarkir get betrayed by oh my god, my brain stay with names. Who's the Sultai?
Tassiger.
Tasker get betrayed by Tasker and basically sold out to the dragons,
Mm. For
which
all the
is,
good it does him.
yes, exactly. So I think the idea of having this kind of civilized meeting and then turning it on its head is a pretty cool idea for that card. Not exactly what I would say is the reddest moment in all of Magic. Like, it doesn't strike me as being, oh, that's a red moment. If anything, it strikes me as being black.
Mm.
But the idea of that moment being captured on a card, I think, would be pretty good. Whereas, everyone's kind of, a bit frosty with each other, but not really doing anything like you do in a game of Commander. And then suddenly someone plays Disrupt Decorum and all shit breaks loose. I think that's a pretty good idea. My legendary creature in this one, and this one is maybe one of the pricier cards, is Neheb the Eternal. We've had 3 Nehebs. We've had the Rakdos one where he's not a zombie, and then the 2 zombie ones where he's mono red. Neheb the Eternal is the one from Hour of Devastation. It's the best one, objectively. There's been no reprint of him, which is unusual, really. I kind of thought he might have got one in like maybe a master set or something, because Amon Ket's been a couple of years gone now. I think it's in kind of reprint territory. And it's quite expensive. It's like 20 quid now. And he's one of the most... Yeah, he's like, getting up there. And he's one of the most expensive mono red commanders as well. So I think he'd be... Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I pulled one, thankfully, which is pretty cool. I bought a lot of Amonkhet. The artwork I'd like to see for him, because this is a good opportunity to kind of see different facets of characters. And this is interesting, because this is a character where we don't have a lot of him story-wise. Like, he's the general of the Dread Horde. Like, he's kind of... Bolas's like general, if you like, before Liliana kind of took over being a necromancer. So we do have like a background for his character, but he doesn't appear, he doesn't like have much dialogue in any of the stories, mainly because it was a name, when we spoke to Anthony Tessitore, that was a name of a character that appeared in flavor text, and then they later went, oh, we can actually use that for like one of our like legendary creatures. I would like to see him actively getting plated with the Lazotep. So he's been mummified. He's one of the past champions of the trials, and then him being taken away and having his mummified corpse, or his kind of anointed corpse, be in the process of being coated with the Lazotep, which is the indestructible stone that the Dread Horde were all coated in, which is what the reason that Bolas wanted to go to Amonkhet in the first place, is because he thought he could make his zombies into a travelable material, because only non-organic matter, if you're not a planeswalker, can travel through the multiverse. So that's why he wanted to coat his army in Lazotep. Yeah, I really like that idea. Like, it kind of strikes me as if you see any panels from like X-Men comics of Wolverine being like coated
that's exactly what I was just thinking.
Yeah. So I'd want to see that on his card. I think that'd be pretty cool, because at the moment the 2 zombie artworks we have of him is, don't get me wrong, both very cool, but it's just him looking menacing and being on fire for whatever reason. So yeah, I'd like to see him in that process. My Planeswalker slot, you'll like this one, Koth of the Hammer.
Nice.
Yeah. Again, I could have gone down the Sarkhan route, or the Chandra route. Oh god, hot take number 3. I'm so sick of Chandra. I'm so sick of her.
Did you just say hot take for Chandra?
Oh, fuck. I think she's a great character, and I do understand and think it is correct that she is one of the forefront characters of the game. She's very accessible. She's a cool character. Pyromancy is very awesome. But there's just too much. It's too much. It's too much of all of them. Too much of all of the Gatewatch. Even now that the Gatewatch has been disbanded for over a year of story. So instead, I went with Koth the Hammer. He has had a reprint. So we do have 2 different artworks of him, because he came in a dual deck. But I kind of feel like he's one of those fan favorite planeswalkers which maybe deserves just another one, and he would be good to put in a Commander collection, because it would also open him up to other players that don't run him.
He's very strong in mono red as well, which I guess Freyalise feels very strong as a mono green. So I feel like very quintessentially red.
And I kind of feel I'm still on the Tin Hat territory train of, which is a hard sentence to make up on the spot, and say I still believe we're going to go to Phyrexia next year. Not next year as in 2021, the next year, 2022. I'm still holding out hope.
I also realised that they didn't release Garruk as one of the Planeswalkers for Kaldheim. I don't know what the fuck are they doing with this. Stop letting us down. Yeah, we will. We'll get there eventually. We have to.
I don't know. Yeah. So just quickly on that Garruk thing, because yes, you're right. They haven't released him as one of the Planeswalkers that's going to be in Kaldheim. I think it's because they don't want people to get sick of their Planeswalkers anymore. So if he was an Eldraine and then literally a year later he appears in Kaldheim in a very
that's a
similar
very
role.
good point. Yeah, actually, market research would have said diversify Planeswalkers between blocks.
Yes,
that's a good point.
because people really don't like your key characters anymore because you've just saturated the market with them. So maybe start using different.
That makes sense.
And
actually.
hey, we've got Tybalt. And that's
oh man,
cool.
I'm hyped. I'm really hyped for Tybalt. Yeah. Who'd have thought he was going to be the not protagonist? That's the wrong word. But who thought he was going to be the center stage character for the trailer? I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Again, he was actually a character that segues quite nicely back into what we're talking about. He was a Planeswalker I was planning to put in this Commander collection, but I kind of feel like Tybalt the Fiend Blooded, which is his 2-mana Planeswalker, right? That's it. That's that one, right? It's just too much of a meme to put in it.
It's the memeiest of memes. Like, it's one of the strongest Magic memes of the last decade for sure.
Yeah, so I don't think he's actually a good reprint. He would have been in that collection, and people would have gone, "Ha ha! I'm spending £50 on this product."
Yeah, especially when they offered it out as a white border version, didn't they, to replace a certain card from a certain set.
So that's my Planeswalker, and I don't know what you could do with Koth. I think one of the most interesting artworks with Koth on it is his Phyrexian Arena artwork, which shows him in the Phyrexian Arena, and it's him because he's a Geomancer, right? So he controls rocks and lava. So I'd want to see him in more of that, guys. Like, yes, I love the Planeswalker full length, full art paintings of these Planeswalkers looking stoic and standing in various poses, but they're never very active on the Planeswalker cards. That's one of the big sort of issues people have with the Planeswalker cards. Like, very rarely do we get to see them in action. I think Ajani the Great-Hearted was one of the last times we saw a Planeswalker really doing their shit on a card. So yeah, I'd want that. I'd want them to start maybe putting them in some power poses and start doing some cool stuff. My next card was Chaos Warp. Not very expensive card, not very unavailable card, but it is the most red removal outside of doing burn. And I kind of feel like if you want to do these collections, you want to show all facets of a color. And Chaos Warp is one of the most, if not the most popular red removal spell in the format, because it's not burn. Like, things can survive being hit with 3 damage from a lightning bolt. Things can be indestructible, or, it's the format of laying down big fatty creatures. So maybe you don't want to have burn spells. What you need to do is exile them or shuffle them back into your library, which is what Chaos Warp does. I do love the current artwork for Chaos Warp, the portal that's, a human comes in and a rhino comes out the other end. Maybe something more like that, but maybe just more whimsical. I want to see an uncard style of artwork from like Ralph Horsley or something.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see something really weird coming out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know
it doesn't
where
have to be like a portal, does it? It could be that your body is literally being warped.
Yep.
You could be almost like someone's twisted like metal almost kind of thing. I wouldn't mind seeing something like that, like seeing an artifact.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, this is the one that I don't actually have a hard and fast flavor idea for. I just kind of feel like you could really amp up the weird with it. You have like Warp World or Possibility Storm, those kinds of artworks where red gets real abstract real fast. And I think you could do that with Chaos Warp. It's about the only chaosy card that people don't spit at you for playing in EDH. So I feel like we can push the boundary maybe a little bit. The next couple of cards I'll just run through them very quickly. I've got Stolen Strategy, which is the enchantment which lets you do the impulsive draw off the top of other people's libraries at the beginning of your turn. It's an all-star, really, in red decks. I play it in my mono-red deck. I don't know a single mono-red deck, really, that doesn't play it. I think your Goblin Krenko one doesn't, simply because it just is full in on goblins.
Yeah.
But almost every other mono-red deck I see plays this card. It's got a very cool artwork. Again, a little bit like Diabolic Intent, because this is another Battleborn card. It has an Azra on the top of it doing something a little bit more abstract with these kind of knowledge orbs that it's kind of picking and choosing from because it's stealing your strategy. I would want to see something a bit more literal. I'd want to see Dak Faden on the artwork. People love Dak Faden. He's the greatest
Mm.
thief in the multiverse. And something simple, just him like maybe on the back of a wagon, like stealing plans out of a satchel, or him like pickpocketing like an Azorius law mage or something. You know, something like that. Show him a bit more cavalier. People love Dak Faden. They love seeing him in artworks. And there was one of the biggest controversies of last year. It wasn't really anything to do with the game. It was to do with the fact that in the War of the Spark trailer, he died.
It wasn't even, yeah, it wasn't nothing to do with the game because it wasn't on any of the cards.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it wasn't even off screen. It was on screen. It was the only screen we got of him. There was no in play aspect to it. God, rip. Anyway, rip. I'm over it apparently.
See, I'm not even like a Dak fan. I don't really care that much about him, but I know as just a general character, he is a fan favorite. So I think he deserves some more time. Ember Cleave is another card I put in this thing. So this is, so I said, I didn't put in a tutor. Because Gamble was the only one I could really think of that would be worth anything. So instead I went for an equipment, and Embercleave is the one that I'm talking about here. Again, relatively recent. It was printed in Eldraine. It's not like it's, a card that no one can get a hold of, but it in every format that it's viable in, it's just an all-star red card. And I kind of like the idea, like how you like coloured equipments and coloured enchantments, because it adds more flavour. And I think the red ones especially kind of do that, just because of the idea that equipment is forged, it is made, and Embercleave is no different. Embercleave and a lot of the other cards in Eldraine didn't get that storybook showcase treatment because they weren't part of the cycle of cards that got it. They weren't part of the adventure cycle, which I kind of feel is a shame because there were so many cues in that set for like Arthurian legend, or Robin Hood legend even got put in there, like old like sort of Anglo-Saxon legends and things like that. And I think Embercleave kind of fits in that idea, that realm. So what I'd want to see is not necessarily a showcase that emulates the Eldraine showcase, but maybe an artwork that's more like fairy tale storybook illustration. So less of a literal, like, this is the sword. Because actually I didn't think the sword artwork for it, as much as it was a cool painting of a sword, it didn't give me like sort of, epic legendary sword vibes, if I'm honest with you.
No, I mean the new one that we've seen leaked from sword from Kaldheim looks more like Excalibur than Embercleave does. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I'd want to see maybe like a storybook illustration of Embercleave, maybe in the big fiery pyre that the Embercleave that the Embereth Knights have to go in, the Iron Forge. Ironcrag Forge, where they have to actually go in and forge their sword and pull it out and all this kind of stuff.
Well, I think even Ironcrag feet feels more like an Excalibur card than Embercleave did.
It does, exactly. This is my point. So I'd want to see something like that, but done in that kind of very illustrative way. The kind of thing that if you ever watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they kind of do riffs on all those medieval like illustrations that you find in old books or old versions of the Bible and things like that. Where there's like really weird annotations in the corners and really weird little illustrations of like monks putting trumpets up their bottoms. I'd want to see something in that kind of style, but maybe for Embercleave. If you don't know about monks putting trumpets up their bottoms,
you haven't lived.
Yeah, it's a really weird medieval like joke that loads of monks used to do in like corners of books and things. But yeah, that's what I want to see. My Soul Ring, I want it straight down the middle. I want it straight down the line fantasy. I want Frodo, Lord of the Rings, Mount Doom, ring in a fiery molten lava pit. Okay, obviously we can't make it be Frodo or Lord of the Rings, but I absolutely just want that analog there. So many people make Lord of the Rings themed decks, like that, whether it's Kenrith or whether it's the new Jared, True Heir, or whatever it is, the new Naya legendary from
Aragorn. Oh man,
exactly. Loads of people have been doing these decks, and I just kind of feel like just make Soul Ring the one ring. Enough altruists have done it.
It's the most altered thing that the Soul Ring's obviously been altered towards. Yeah,
yes.
For sure.
And whilst I wouldn't necessarily want it to make it like explicitly like them going wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this is the one ring, I think having a Soul Ring being forged in a sort of molten environment. So, for example, I picked, just to make it Magic relevant, I picked it being in Perthros's forge. So maybe you see Perthros forging a ring in his fires, and that's the Soul Ring artwork that we have. I think that, and with a little flavor text saying, like Perthros's greatest weapon was not a blade, or something similar, and have it be that ring. I think just straight down the line, give people what they want. And then my command tower for my Commander Collection Red. This one's a bit left field. I don't know how I feel about this one, actually. Now I'm looking at it, like the narrative that's telling. I'd want to make it a Dranith Guard Tower on the plane of a Courier. And the reason I was thinking that is because what is like a red structure or a red society or a moment which I can capture with like a command tower? And I wanted it again to be a literal tower. And I just thought, the idea of combat and like passion and maybe hatred, because it's something that we were talking about a couple of episodes ago, where we talked about red actually being the far more destructive, like, color pie section than say black,
Mm.
And I think the soldiers of Dranith, the sort of black, white, red soldiers of Dranith, their red aspect is that undying passion to kind of protect their city. So I was thinking maybe it was the soldiers of Dranith firing ballistas out of the top of a tower down at some invading monsters that are trying to climb up the tower and attack them. A little bit like that. A little bit like the cave paintings that Seb McKinnon did for the Mythos cycle.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the Mythos of Snapdax shows Snapdax destroying the city of Dranith. So I wanted something that kind of had that kind of evocative nature, but instead of it being on the side of the monsters having the upper hand, it was the side of the humans of Dranith being able to fight back. And that was your like command tower for red. Maybe a little bit dark, maybe a little bit full on. I think it's because recently I started rewatching Attack on Titan.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
Yeah, and there's that in the opening credits for, I think it's the second season. It could be first. I could be wrong. Where it does that sweeping shot of all the soldiers shooting rifles at the top of the tower down at the invading Titans. That was what I had in my head.
Yeah, it's very Dranithy, that, isn't it?
Yes, I think they took a lot of inspiration there for that. But yeah, cool. Oh, so we got through it. Those are our Commander collections with added flavour. I do hope we get them in the future. I can't imagine why we wouldn't.
No, I can't. The only thing that, as I said, top of 10 episode, the same sentiment is it's weird that they started with green. I mean, I know that green is essentially the Commander colour of Commander, but it is also strange, obviously, when everything's done in the kind of WUBR order. But then also, we still haven't finished the signature spellbooks, which I think they probably won't now. And obviously, we didn't get a black or a green one, but we did get a white, a red, and a blue one. So,
well, you say that they won't. They did release the Chandra one this year. That was still a product that happened this year.
Just product on product on product on product. Yeah, that's, I guess, that's the only issue is, I guess, the signature spellbooks to a degree are supposed to be multi-format viability, things like Past in Flames obviously getting printed and stuff like that. Whereas, I guess, the Commander collections are specific to Commander format. So yeah, maybe they'll continue both at the same time, but go in slightly different directions with them. But yeah, it'd be strange if they did start this and then didn't at least continue it in the coming years. It'll obviously take up to a decade to complete the whole cycle. Maybe they then do artifacts. Maybe they then do lands, and that's when we get Cabal Coffers. Who knows? Or maybe it'll just be 8 different versions of Command Tower with different artwork finally. Who knows?
I wouldn't be upset about that. The reason that I think we said we wanted to keep the Sol Ring and the Command Tower in our like dream versions of them is because it's nice to have different versions of these things and to make them relatively accessible. I'm going to use that with like a massive air quotes because obviously the real world pricing of these collections has left many feeling that it's not accessible at all, and rightly so.
On the flip side of that, the cards themselves individually have the versions from the collections are a significant cut cheaper than any of the other versions are. So if there was something that you really want a Sylvan library that's actually got decent lore, you can get it, and it's still cheaper than the other ones. So buying products individually, all in one, might not be for you, but still having access to them as individual cards, good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same principle as a lot of the Secret S stuff, where a lot of the issues surrounding it as a physical product that consumers have to interact with, there are a lot of issues. The idea of having different flavors and different artworks and different takes on staples, which aren't necessarily in sets which are printed like for standard, so they're not everywhere all the time. It's kind of a nice idea. So yeah, I do hope they continue with it. I can't imagine they won't do the spell books. They do sell relatively well, and maybe actually they will probably sell better because people would rather buy the spell books than they would the Commander collections. But yeah, we will see. We've only got a couple of weeks, or maybe a week even. Oh my lord, it's the 18th of the talking about recording it. So yeah, we've got less than a week really till Christmas. So we will be doing 2 more episodes, I suppose, this year. We'll have to have a little talk about what we want to do for them, because I think we had more than a couple of ideas, so we might not be able to fit them all in. We will be doing our first look at Kaldheim sort of review, if you like, or our kind of initial Vikings in Magic the Gathering episode, and then we'll do proper ones when the actual spoiler season hits, because as I said at the top of the episode, I think forcing yourself to have an artificial break from these things, because WotC won't let you have a break, is maybe a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, mental health is exceptionally key right now. And as much as new stuff, you would think ostensibly is a good thing, turns out it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, both for your wallet and for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And in the terms of doing a podcast, for your voice as well. So there we go. Guys, if you are listening, which if you're hearing this right now means you are listening. Weird existential realization.
Yeah,
Guys, what would you put in your Commander collections? Do let us know. You can reach out to us on Twitter at mtflavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. Do you have any final words for this episode, Nathan?
I don't actually. Season's greetings, everybody. I think realistically this will probably be the last one you hear before Christmas actually comes out. The next will probably be afterwards. So have an amazing Christmas, no matter who you're doing it with, where you're doing it. Be safe, be merry.
Yes, same from me as well. If this is the last time you hear us before your festive activities kick off, Merry Festmas and everything that entails for you. Other than that, guys, the last thing that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.